Here's Kevin Spacey, who spoke outside court in London yesterday. This is what he had to say for himself.
I imagine that many of you can understand that there's a lot for me to process after what has just happened today. But I would like to say that I'm enormously grateful to the jury for having taken the time to examine all of the evidence and all of the facts carefully before they reach their decision. And I am humbled by the outcome today.
That is Kevin Spacey being found not guilty of the charges that were against him. And the question is very simple. Should he now be able to get on with his life as before? The jury found Kevin Spacey not guilty. There are now no criminal charges facing him. He has been found not guilty in a UK court. But obviously, this case has been all over the papers. The allegations are there against him. There are many who say, can he get back to his career as before? Is it possible to get back to your career as before when your face has been all over the media and when your case has been all over social media? Should he be allowed to get back to his life as before? What happens next? What should happen next? I studied as a lawyer 30 years ago. I believe that someone is innocent until proven guilty. And in this case, he has not been proven guilty. I'm joined by criminal defence solicitor Joseph Kotrie-Monson, who is director of the Mary Monson Solicitors at Fleet Street, who specialises in serious crime. Thank you so much, Joseph, for joining me. Joseph, just tell us, how is the system meant to work? These are serious allegations. And I suppose, is there a distinction between being found not guilty and being innocent?
Well, we're getting straight to it, aren't we, David? Not guilty in our constitution, in our society, that means innocent. That's the way he should be regarded. And I have to say congratulations to Kevin Spacey today, to Patrick Gibbs Casey, who excellently represented him. And the reason I say that unusually with such confidence is this. 4 complainants, apparently not linked, a prosecution trawl, offences alleged to have taken place between 2001 and 2013, a movable feast of counts, some of which were dropped on the door of the court by the prosecution or discounted for technical reasons. And the prosecution still, despite all of those coincidences of all of these people making these allegations, you get 2 complainants in a sexual offences allegation. You have an uphill job as a defence lawyer. He had 4, and the jury came back after mere hours, after a month-long trial. This man was innocent of those charges. And I have to say, given the fact that most of these alleged incidences didn't go beyond the first advance and in fact were retreated from by the actor on the prosecution's own evidence immediately afterwards, it's hard to see how they had the confidence to assume that he would not have reasonable belief in consent when he appeared to have rowed back immediately when he was clear that he didn't have it. Innocent until proven guilty? Yes. Can somebody be rehabilitated? It's actually interesting, David, because he's an actor and it's not just about his constitutional name as a subject, well, as a resident, certainly, of the United Kingdom, but it's the PR versus the criminal liability. And that's more of a challenge because, David, don't we remember there were all of those, was it 30 different allegations, unproven of various types, and it being over in America, consequent civil lawsuits that have made it very difficult for him to rehabilitate himself. And of course, they haven't been tested. And that part of it doesn't seem fair because there he's guilty of those without a trial. BuzzFeed article, Vulture article, anonymous person, doesn't seem fair.
So have we got the balance wrong? You'll know this. There are some cases in the UK, like family law cases involving young people, cases involving young people going into the care system, cases involving divorce, where our system's really, really clear. We ask journalists not to report on them. there are quite strong strictures around the family law courts so that we don't bring those young people's lives, if you like, into the public domain. And there are some criminal cases where, particularly where they're involving young people, journalists and things have to be pretty careful about how they report them. In a world of social media, in a world where of 24-hour media, which was not always the case, is the system not working when effectively Kevin Spacey, or anyone, frankly, who has allegations against them, particularly of a sexual nature, can find their names dragged through the mud, and then they are actually found not guilty, and you say not guilty equates with innocence, and they are unable to get on with that. Is that fair?
No, and if I may say, David, you're a little bit modest when you describe your own legal experience in that regard, because you understand not just the consequences of conviction, but the excellent Lammy review about the fact that the results aren't always a fair representation themselves, which is something that, as we've seen yesterday with the horrific Salford case of Andrew Malkinson, which looked like, let's be generous and say, police incompetence of the most extreme part in not disclosing that key witnesses in a rape case. Guy goes to prison for 17 years. Key witnesses were drug addicts and criminals who got an easy ride, and the police never even told the defence about it. But in terms of whether somebody can be rehabilitated, in terms of whether somebody should have the right to be forgotten, as you say, in our modern internet permanence, very, very difficult. It's not tomorrow's fish and chip paper anymore.
Because there's a balance to be struck here, because you could say, look, if you're found guilty, then absolutely it should be reported, it should be clear that of course your name is dragged through the mud, you've been found guilty.
And let me tell you what happens, if I may, David, in those situations. There's the person was found innocent. What happens is the case coming to court is well reported in its gory detail, and if it's high profile, the evidence if it emerges, and only in the very most high profile cases is the not guilty verdict publicised. If it is, it's a very small article on page 7. It's no longer front page news because the media wants the salacious, this evil person, and of course I'm not including the good folks at LBC in this, but the reality is that that kind of stuff, it makes us listen, it makes us...
Joseph, I've got to put
people are not rehabilitated.
Joseph, I've got to put the other side of this because we've got some text messages coming in. The other side of this is that this story broke around the Me Too moment.
Yes.
We know that moment was just a sort of fundamental breakthrough, particularly for assaults against women.
Yes.
We know that rape prosecutions in our own country at the moment is shockingly low.
Yes.
We know how hard it is,
absolutely,
particularly for women going through the system and making their case against the person that's alleged to have raped them.
Yes.
We also know, and this is what the police and the prosecution say,
yes,
they say it's hugely important that these names are out there in the public, because what we find is people are encouraged to come forward as a result of their names being in the public.
And this is the real dilemma.
That's the balance.
John Warboys. This is a guy who wouldn't have faced that second round of prosecutions had it not been for the fact that the first case was so well publicised. I'll be the first to say there is a public interest dilemma here with regard to publicity. But that doesn't mean that when the jury have made a decision, that we take the place of them and say, well, hang on a minute, I think that I know better than them. I wasn't in court. I've read some articles. I've read a few articles from American publications about people coming forward, but not backing it up with it being tested in court. And I think, therefore, that case, the Kevin Spacey case, the case of an innocent man, somehow has a bearing. Sexual offenders who are convicted fairly should be treated to telephone numbers.
We ought not to forget that Kevin Spacey's
protection.
We ought not to forget that Kevin Spacey's wealthy. Do rich defendants have better outcomes by virtue of their wealth and the lawyers that they're able to hire?
Absolutely, they do. But that doesn't mean they get special treatment. that means they get treated fairly in the context of a legal aid system that is not fit for purpose. It's my grotesque duty to tell clients who can afford it. And when I mean afford it, I mean that they have access to any money, even if it's borrowing it from family members, that the resources that will be afforded to them, rather than the £1,500 that will be paid to their solicitor over the period of a year and a half to defend them on a case they could get 10 years for, but the resources that will be put into their case if they fund it privately are adequate, not a magic wand that makes the case go away, but something that makes the case fair. And it's a stain on the good international reputation of our legal system, that when somebody is charged with a criminal offence, it's either remortgage your house or go legal aid, still have to pay a contribution for it, and get what may risk, despite all the best efforts of really dedicated lawyers, to be a bad service.
Joseph Kotrie-Monson, Criminal Defence Solicitor, Director of the Mary Monson Solicitors at Fleet Street. Thank you so much for kicking off this debate. I hope that I never, ever need your services.